Good morning, Dan and Amy. So Donald Trump is meeting today with Egyptian President el-Sisi at the White House, their first face-to-face meeting since Trump was inaugurated President of the United States.
Sisi, meeting Obama never had with Sisi.
This is
a new era.
This has the potential to be an important. Well, it is an important relationship. Egypt is the second largest recipient of foreign aid behind U.S. foreign aid behind Israel, and el-Sisi is a sworn enemy of the Muslim Brotherhood, which should be designated a terrorist organization in my estimation. So this is an important relationship to fighting the war against Islamofascism. But for more on this, let's get an expert opinion on this, and that expert opinion will come to us via Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who is the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and former U.S. Navy lieutenant. He's also the author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Zuhdi, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So what about this issue? This is a point of some contention between kind of hardliners, I would describe, when it comes to combating radical Islamic terrorism, and the diplomat set about the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood. El-Sisi, one of the first things he did when he assumed office was to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm not sure how impactful that is, but it's a good message sender at the least. And so, what should Trump, in your estimation, seek to extract from el-Sisi? How can they work together to combat this radical element within Islam that's doing things like persecuting Coptic Christians in Egypt?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head about the Christian community. They've been we're suffering significantly under the Brotherhood. Now the president is looking to sort of regroup our allies in the war against ISIS, and there's no better ally than el-Sisi. The designation of the Brotherhood, we were, as somebody who's dedicated my life to fighting the Brotherhood, I think the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood is clearly a terror organization. I mean, just a few days ago, they had some public pronouncements on social media, et cetera, that said that they basically endorsed militant operations against those who threaten the Islamic State and who want to build a Sharia state. So there's no doubt that the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood is a foreign terrorist organization. And
hello?
Oh, no, they've intercepted another one of our pro-freedom guests. That's what they do.
NSA has got to give us a break, especially on a Monday.
I think it was because your harsh criticism of Congressman Adam Schiff. I think that was the problem. Do we have Zuhdi back?
Yeah, I think he's there. Oh wait,
Zuhdi, are you back?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Okay.
That was a quick
disconnect
and reconnect. Thank you.
We'll reconnoiter our electronic setup here to make sure that it's not vulnerable to such attacks again. So I'm sorry, you were saying about the Muslim Brotherhood and the propriety in designating it as a terrorist organization and so forth.
Yeah, the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood clearly is a terror organization by virtue of their militant attacks on churches, on the Coptic community, their refusal to abide by the rule of law in Egypt. The more complicated thing for President Trump is whether that would translate into an international designation. I think that's more complicated. We need to do it country by country, where there are groups that are not named the Brotherhood, but really are legacy groups of them that we need to address really country by country. But I also think that I would like to see President Trump hold el-Sisi accountable to the reforms that he supposedly rhetorically said he was going to do in January 2014, where he said the right things about countering violence, et cetera, but hasn't talked about democracy and liberty and what he's for. So he has actually overseen the torture and imprisonment of journalists and other things that really has really become Mubarak 2.0. Rather than really an advancement of what the revolution was looking for.
I wish President Trump would say, hey, we'll give you your $1.3 billion in foreign aid if you release that Egyptian-American woman that they're holding.
Yeah, and not only her, but there are a number of other prisoners that are in jail for blasphemy laws and other things that, as much as el-Sisi is not a Muslim Brotherhood fan, he has invoked some Sharia-type laws and blasphemy and apostasy laws that have set his country back into the 20th, if not the 13th century.
Here's if I was president of the United States, hilarious. That would be funny. But here would be my kind of two-pronged threshold you have to clear to receive aid from this country. One, you have to be religiously tolerant, and you have to protect religious people who are being persecuted because of their religious affiliation. Number two, you have to have free and fair elections. If you can't accomplish those two things, then we're not going to support you financially, even where we may work together. And it gets us out of this problem of financing regimes that do some good while they're engaged in repressive acts like you're describing. What do you think of that?
I would just add not only free elections, but free speech. And I think the template for this is the U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom. I sat on that commission for 4 years till 2016. Egypt was listed as one of our countries of concern because of their inability to punish people who would commit acts that were violent against religious minorities, and their inability to provide freedoms not only for the minorities, but also Sunnis who were fighting, who were dissidents that wanted to be free and speak out. So religious freedom, you're right, is what we can hold them accountable to. And one of the sad things I saw, as strong as President Trump has been in hard power versus ISIS, it seems that soft power is becoming more irrelevant as we see basically an acceptance of Assad as the president of Syria and other sort of a weakening of our stance for freedom and democracy. So I hope with el-Sisi, which is one of the strongest allies we have, we test that friendship and say, we will protect you, we will work with you if you start to stand with some of our stances on freedom and liberty.
And this goes to, our new partner in peace, the mullahs in Iran, don't you know? And the news out of Iran sentencing a 21-year-old to death after he, quote unquote, insulted Islam on some messenger app. I mean, this is the the same kind, how we're doing these deals that are dubious in nature at best, in my estimation, providing a pathway to a nuclear Iran. And yet there's no carrot and stick when it comes to natural rights.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because, as the president meets with el-Sisi today, are the American people going to start to get a sense of what a Trump doctrine is going to look like in the Middle East? And it has to start to make sense as what's the common lens he's looking through. If he turns a blind eye to what's happening in Iran, with how strong he was in the campaign against the Iran deal and how horrible that was, how does it make sense to say, well, we will no longer work to see the end of the Assad regime when that's exactly what the Iranians wanted, which is their client state of Assad, Hezbollah and 20 to 40,000 troops in Syria. He says we don't want to muddle in the Syrian politics. It's up to the Syrian people, when in fact, if that was true of what Secretary Tillerson and Ambassador Haley said, if that's true, then we would tell the Russians and the Iranians to get the heck out of Dodge in Syria and let the Syrian people determine for themselves. So we have to start putting this puzzle together in a clear way where the American public can start to say, okay, President Trump has a common, consistent vision of what he applies to Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Syria, rather than this sort of muddled confusion that happens.
Right. No, I agree with that. I think that's well stated. And if they do take that hands-off approach with respect to the Assad regime, aren't you in effect handing victory to Hezbollah?
Exactly. And how does that telegraph to Israel? One of their greatest threats to their security is Hezbollah and Iran, in which we basically say now, well, it doesn't matter. Assad used weapons 40 times. Chemical weapons, it doesn't matter. And on the one hand, we were critical of Obama's rhetoric when he didn't back that up with anything. It almost seems now we've made even a step backwards as we've stepped away from the rhetoric and accepted Assad. And there's no way, as hard as it is to say, well, what would replace Assad? Let it truly be up to the Syrian people. Let's tell the Russians and the Iranians rhetorically and openly to withdraw from Syria and let them have some self-determination. And I think ultimately that's the path for every country in the Middle East to move towards the 21st century and to be more free.
He served our country in the U.S. Navy, Lieutenant Commander. He is a medical doctor as well, if I'm remembering correctly. He is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and the author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Dr. Jasser, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.